Wandra sits in a jail cell. He is back in Idaho, accused of killing young Michael Vaughn.
You're pure evil. You have no heart. You have no soul.
Wandra is accused of murdering her then 5-year-old son in 2021. Would you think you'll ever get the answer as to why?
No, because there is no answer to why. Why would somebody hurt an innocent little boy? What answer could you give? What answer could you possibly give? How scared was he? Did he ask for me? Did he ask for Tyler?
Stacy Wondra has been charged with first-degree murder and second-degree kidnapping and destruction of evidence.
Michael Monkey Vaughn went missing from his Fruitland neighborhood on July 27, 2021.
This is a criminal investigation.
Now, more than 4 years later, in newly unsealed court documents, Fruitland police named 4 people they believed are involved in Michael's murder. Those 4 names are ones we've heard before.
This is Sarah Wandra. This is Sarah's husband, Stacy Wandra. This is Brandon Shirtliff, Adrian Lucian.
As for what these 4 people have in common, they were all staying at the Wandras' home when Michael disappeared in 2021. That's just half a mile from Michael's home where he was last seen. In the PCA, police pointed to video evidence they say showing Shirtliff walking around the neighborhood. They say Shirtliff helped move Michael's body in a duffel bag temporarily to his mom's home in Kuna before standing guard as they buried him in the Wandras' Fruitland backyard. Stacy Wandra told police the 4 hoped to sell Michael for $10,000 each. He says the idea came from Adrian Lucian. Idaho News 6 is now learning Lucian was arrested and released in Indiana in October for a traffic-related misdemeanor. Sarah Wandra is currently serving time in the Idaho State Prison System for unrelated charges. She's eligible for parole in early 2026.
Karen, is there any connection between the Vaughn family and the home where police had been searching?
No, we've heard this more than once from the family representatives and from the police department that there is no connection between the Vaughn family and the home where this search took place.
As you know, from the time Michael went missing, this has been an all-hands-on-deck investigation, and it remains very active and an ongoing investigation. You can't take one of our most precious citizens from us and ever expect us to stop. During the course of this investigation to date, we received credible information that the remains of Michael Vaughn could be found in the backyard at 1102 Red Wing Street in Fruitland. As a result, the Fruitland Police Department obtained a search warrant for the residence along with the front and backyards. That search warrant was served on November 11th. It was a Friday. We served that late in the evening. Upon entry, officers encountered Sarah Wandra, one of the known occupants of the home, and Sarah was subsequently arrested based on probable cause that she had knowledge of Michael's death and failed to report that death to law enforcement. The following day, the Fruitland Police Department, joined by the Idaho State Police, the Idaho Mountain Search and Rescue, the Fruitland Fire Department, and the Fruitland Public Works Department, began a very methodical excavation of the backyard of the Wandras' home. During that excavation process, the Idaho Mountain Search and Rescue, Mountain States detection dogs deployed multiple certified human remains detection dogs on the property, all of them alerting to the presence of human remains. Ground penetrating radar was also used and deployed, detecting anomalies in the backyard. We completed the excavation of the entire backyard and removed over 250 yards of dirt. Prior to backfilling the yard, the dirt was meticulously sifted for any potential human remains. We did not find Michael's remains. Although the remains of Michael Vaughn were not recovered, we strongly believe, based on evidence, that Michael was abducted and is deceased, and that his remains were buried and later moved from the property. As of today, the whereabouts of his remains are unknown. However, the investigation is active, fluid, and ongoing. Once the excavation was complete, we conducted a thorough search of the Wandras' residence. The search was productive, and additional investigative evidence was recovered and is currently being processed.
An hour's worth of body camera footage showing Stacy Wandra FaceTiming with detectives and directing to where Monkey's body was buried in his backyard.
It's like right under that mound area. It's right under the mound. About where at compared to the trees?
A little like right to the right of the trees area. It should be, it should be a garbage bag.
Okay, what color is the garbage bag?
It would either be white or black. We only had two colors.
Is the duct tape still going to be over his mouth?
It should be.
Okay.
I didn't watch to take them off.
Okay.
So you should have everything intact as it was.
He claims he watched the burial happen.
Okay. How far down is Michael?
I don't know how far she actually dug.
And the she he's referring to, that's his wife Sarah, another suspect in the case. Stacy says Adrian, a third suspect, was also there for the burial.
Out of 300 homes, police say canines tracked Michael's scent to the home where Stacy, his wife Sarah, and their two roommates Brandon Shirtliff and Adrian Lucian lived.
As Joe mentioned, a newly released probable cause affidavit filed in June lays out the interviews following Michael's disappearance. Again, during these initial searches, police say canines tracked Michael's scent to the fence line of the home where Stacy Wandra, his wife Sarah, and their two roommates, Brandon Shirtliff and Adrian Lucian, lived. All four of those individuals have been named people of interest in Michael's disappearance. One of Michael's neighbors told police they saw Michael riding a bike outside of the Wandra's home the day that he disappeared. Another neighbor said they saw that same tricycle at the Wandra's home during a garage sale months before Michael disappeared. The Wandras initially denied any involvement, but then in November of 2022, Stacy asked to meet with investigators. The PCA states Stacy claims he was home the night Michael was allegedly abducted and saw Sarah carrying Michael into the house. Stacy allegedly told police it was Adrian's idea to take a child to sell for money, and they would get a $10,000 cut. Stacy claims Sarah told everyone to, quote, follow her lead. Stacy told investigators they took him to Brandon's mother's home in Kuna that night, where they left Michael overnight. Stacy claims the other three returned to Brandon's mom's house the next day and brought Michael back to the Wandra's home in Fruitland. Stacy told police Michael was not alive, and Sarah and Adrian buried him in the Wandra's backyard. 2 days after Stacy's interview with police, they executed a search warrant and excavated the Wandra's backyard. The affidavit says cadaver dogs alerted to the same area where Stacy told detectives Michael's body was buried, but to this day, Michael has not been found.
Hello everybody, how are you doing? Today is May 8th, 2026. Welcome into Missing PNW Crimes Revisited. My name is Samantha, and we're here to do the closing arguments and the final judgment of Stacy Wandra's preliminary hearing. And I gotta tell you guys, I am so excited that I am done with this. Done in the fact that I have been tired of listening to Stacy Wandra. I'm ready to move forward with great things. And one of those great things is having BRANDI Vaughn up on panel for a series of lives so that she can talk about what her and her family have been through over the past 4.5 years. Hair curlers and crime in the house. Good to see you, love. Best YouTube name on the YouTube streets. We've got Purple Phoenix here. Thank you so much, moderators, for coming in. I truly appreciate you. All in the Tanks is here. Thank you for being here. Oh, goodness. It has been one of those days. I've been tired and yawning all day. Rhonda's in the house. Thank you so much for being here. Truth to Light, Chaos Mama. It's amazing to have so many people a part of Monkey's Army. I truly appreciate you here, and I know the Vaughn family loves all of the support. Yankee Kyle is here, and thank you so much for sharing on your community post the live. I really appreciate that. Karen is here. Courtney Cuz, or Country Cuz, is here. Thank you so much for coming in, love. It's great to see you. I miss you. We need to sit down and just chat, right? Ember is in the house. Thank you so much for coming. Oh, it's just been one of those days. I've been so tired today. So tired. Misdemeanor in the house. Thank you for coming. I have been yawning, and I seriously have been doing nothing but research all day. And that does make me very, very tired. And then I sit here with that comfort food cooking in the crock pot because there's a giant roast and potatoes and carrots, and my belly's ready for some food. Super excited though. Thank you for coming in, Darlene. Just to be here to do the closing arguments and the final judgment. I know we did go over this once in another live, and Purple, I want to let you know that I'll be adding Juanita's testimony in these other videos sometime over the weekend so that you have the information for Monkey Mondays over at the Round Table. You're always welcome to go to the Round Table on Monday. Every Monday is Monkey Monday. And we truly do thank Purple and Wendy for doing Monkey Monday. Yeah, I think I re-listened to Detective Kelleher's testimony 10 times now. And every time I listen to it, I hear something else. So I'll be putting up a lot of shorts and a lot of, information clips from that. We're here to talk about Michael Vaughn and the 4 suspects in Michael Vaughn's case and the preliminary hearing for Stacy Wondra. And the 4 suspects are Stacy Wandra, Sarah Wandra, Adrian Lucian, and Brandon Shirtliff. All 4 suspects are named by law enforcement. All 4 of these suspects have knowledge of Michael's abduction and murder, and they couldn't have that knowledge unless they know or had something to do with Michael's abduction. Stacy Wandra's trial is September 14th of 2026. He is going to trial for first-degree murder, second-degree kidnapping, and destruction of evidence. Sarah Wandra will be charged with the same charges in October of 2026. Adrian and Brandon are both still free, walking the streets, and it is so very frustrating, but we know law enforcement has a plan, and we're just going to trust law enforcement. That's all we can do. They have done everything they possibly can do to bring justice for Michael Vaughn, and they have their reasons. But charges are coming. Charges are coming, will come, and all 4 suspects, I believe, truly will be charged and arrested and put in prison for the rest of their lives, if not get the DP. Michael Vaughn, kidnapped July 27th, 2021 in Fruitland, Idaho, in his neighborhood. And after hearing Detective Kelleher's testimony, Stacy Wandra said that Michael was taken from 9th in Arizona. That is only a house away from the Vaughn family. He also marked an X in front of the Vaughn's home. That's how close Michael Vaughn was to his home when monsters were lurking in the neighborhood after they had been searching and hunting for a child to abduct all day long. And Michael wandered away while his dad was changing his baby sister's diaper, ordering pizza, and it's a sad situation. And we're going to hear details. We're going to hear a lot of information about what the Vaughn family went through after Michael's abduction. You know, the searches that they did, how long they stayed awake, whether they even got a chance to eat food or even wanted to eat food. Their conversations with law enforcement, at least what conversations BRANDI can share, how they were looked into as suspects for their son's abduction. And law enforcement said in the probable cause affidavit that the Vaughn family is not they are not any kind of persons of interest. In Michael's case, they've had nothing to do with the abduction or murder of their son, grandson, or brother, Michael Vaughn. They were investigated for over a year. And now law enforcement is like the Vaughn's family. So whatever you're hearing out on the YouTube streets, make sure they're facts. Make sure you're listening to the right people. And if anybody tells you that the Vaughn family has had something to do with Michael's abduction, you probably want to just click right out of that live stream, because they are not persons of interest. I'm so very excited to talk with BRANDI and help her heal. Michael will get justice. We're going to continue to support the Vaughn family. We're going to keep fighting for justice for Michael, no matter what it takes. Somebody out there could know something about one of these four suspects, about Michael's abduction. Maybe you heard something. Maybe you think it's a rumor, but you're not really sure. You got to call that tip line, 208-642-6006, 208-642-6006, or email findmichael@fruitland.org. No tip is too big or too small. Collect over a $50,000 reward for any information leading to where Michael Vaughn is now. And you can always remain anonymous. Stacy Wondra told detectives that Michael Vaughn was buried in his backyard, and law enforcement believes that Michael Vaughn was in the Wandra's backyard and then moved to an unknown location. And let's talk about cadaver dogs. Stacy Wondra says that Michael was in his backyard. 5 cadaver dogs hit in that backyard. Stacy Wandra says that Brandon Shirtliff, Sarah Wandra, and himself drove Michael using their GMC truck to Cuna with Michael in the back in a duffel bag, where they left him overnight. Dogs, cadaver dogs, also hit at Brandon's mother's house in Cuna. Now we have learned from Juanita Kelleher's testimony that the cadaver dogs have also hit on Sarah and Stacy's white Lexus. And there's only 2 reasons why that could have happened. Stacy says that Brandon, Adrian, and Sarah picked Michael back up the next day from Cuna and brought him back to Fruitland, which Michael would have had to technically be in an automobile, being transported back to Fruitland. And since police believe that Michael Vaughn was in the Wandra's backyard and was moved, Michael Vaughn would have had to have technically been in a vehicle being transported to whatever unknown location. So the fact that cadaver dogs also hit on their white Lexus. Mind you, the same white Lexus that they sold shortly after Michael Vaughn was abducted. Hence the charge, destruction of evidence. That's them getting rid of evidence. That's two examples of why cadaver dogs could have hit on that white Lexus. So even though we know Stacy Wandra tells lies, we have cadaver dogs that are truly showing us that some of what Stacy Wandra has said is true. And those three things are true. Brandon Shirtliff has talked many times to detectives, and we have learned about that. He has told detectives that he saw Sarah and Stacy Wandra with his duffel bag, and they put it in the basement. He couldn't have that information or tell detectives that unless he has knowledge of Michael's abduction and murder, which he has over and over again told us all that he has had nothing to do with that, and he's never even met Michael Vaughn. And Brandon Shirtliff has also spoken to detectives about creating an alibi when Stacy called him, saying, we've got to get our story straight because the cops are on us about this kid. And Stacy and Brandon have corroborated that story to detectives. You cannot create an alibi. You cannot get your story straight if you have had nothing to do with Michael's abduction, Brandon Shirtliff. You can't. You have knowledge and you're still deflecting from it, but the world is learning the truth. We have also heard that Brandon Shirtliff told Detective Kelleher that he owned a red Marlboro duffel bag, and he proceeded to ask Juanita Kelleher if she had found it yet. Such a very disturbing question, Brandon. Why would you ask that? Why don't you know where your duffel bag is? Or did you know where your duffel bag was and you were just worried that they had found it? And if they had found it, was Michael Vaughn in it? You know the answer to that question. You know the answer to the question, where is Michael Vaughn? You moved Michael to this unknown location and yet still refused to talk to law enforcement. Still refused to give the Vaughn family back Michael Vaughn so that they can lay him to rest. And that makes you ugly, mean, and a monster. Adrian Lucian has talked about how the price went up. And we know that Adrian Lucian came up with the plan with Sarah Wandra to sell Michael Vaughn so that each of them could make $10,000. No child is worth any amount of money. These are four greedy people that wanted to sell a child. And it was all Adrian Lucian's idea. He talks about the price going up. He comes into live chats on YouTube and said, y'all took that kid, and pointing the finger at Stacy Wandra. Y'all took that kid. How could he know who took Michael Vaughn if he didn't know something, if he didn't see something? He has friends in Idaho that are known for having involvement in human trafficking. Adrian Lucian tried to start some kind of lady of the night, wanted to use a girl's profile picture, and she's like, no, you can't use my profile picture. And that was after he tried talking her into selling her body for money. which is exactly what the defense attorney at the preliminary hearing and Detective Kelleher said that Adrian and Sarah were doing using a Snapchat app to, I have to be careful how I word this because I got flagged last night for my live because of things that were said, but using that Snapchat to sell women's bodies, to at least maybe even just pretend, scamming people basically, because all they were going to do is catfish, never give what they are promising, and take their money. Adrian Lucian's friends are gang members. Adrian Lucian's friends are bad news, and he's got friends all over the country that are bad news. Adrian has said, they set me up to go to Fruitland. Admitting being set up. Well, what can you be set up for, Adrian, if you had nothing to do with Michael's abduction and murder? Set up? What do you know? And since Adrian and Brandon are still free, I will again tell you, you are running out of time. Tick tock. I don't know how many times we can all say it. I don't know how many times we can all sit here and beg you to go talk to law enforcement. Maybe it isn't worth our time anymore. Maybe it is. Who the hell knows, right? We don't know when you're listening, when you're not listening. But we do know that both of you have a chance to go in, talk to law enforcement, tell law enforcement what you know, and if you don't, you'll be charged, convicted, sitting in prison for the rest of your life because you never told your side of the story, and Stacy Wandra's story put your ass away. And if that's what you want, don't go talk to law enforcement, because it is happening. You both will be charged. You both will be arrested, no matter what you think. Stacy Wandra didn't think that he was going to be arrested, and look at him. He still thinks that he's not going to go to prison, and I don't see that happening. Somebody out there knows something. We know somebody out there knows something because Michael was supposed to be sold to somebody. And those somebodies know other people. Somebody knows more information and they need to call the tip line. This is still an ongoing investigation. Call the tip line at Fruitland Police Department 208-642-6006 or email findmichael@fruitland.org. Be my monkey's hero. Be the Vaughn family's hero. See your face on the news and be like, this is the person that helped find Michael. Michael needs to come home. He was 5 years old when he was abducted. He would have been 10 this June. Almost 5 years he's been gone. His family loves him, and they just want to put Michael to rest. And they deserve to have at least that piece, putting him to rest, knowing where he is, which is at home with a family or being able to have a service for him, just knowing where their son is. 208-642-6006, or you can email findmichael@fruitland.org. We're Monkey's Army. We're never going anywhere. We love you, Michael, and we're going to continue to fight the fight with your family. Country Cruz says Stacy and Sarah would pretend she was pregnant and go to gas stations to beg for money. They are all scammers, and that is very true. They did a lot of scams on people. Sarah will talk because she's getting charged when there's 2 witnesses against the other 2. It's coming. TikTok, says Truth to Light. Maybe promote anonymous tips. Absolutely. You can always report a tip anonymously. Hell, leave a letter under the door of the Fruitland Police Department and slide it under. I don't care how you do it. Just give a tip. Tell law enforcement where Monkey is, or just talk to law enforcement. You 4 behind bars for the rest of your lives for what you did to Michael is the price you get to pay. Thank you, hair curlers and crime. That is so very true. You made the decision to kidnap Michael, murder Michael, and you will face the consequences. That's what happens when you do something so horrific to a 5-year-old little boy. Misdemeanor says, Brandon, Tina, where is Michael, Monkey Vaughn? And we know that Brandon Sherliff knows where Monkey is, even though he denies it, even though he plays games, even though he's got a new best friend whispering in his ear, telling him, you know, you'll get off. Stacy's going to get off. Nobody is getting off, okay? Nobody's getting off. Everybody will be arrested. Oh, let's see. Chaos Mama says, I only listen to the people with the facts and common sense, like you in purple. Thank you so much for that. I won't even get into it. It's not even worth my time anymore. I don't understand how people roll out of the side of the bed, put their feet on the ground, and say, today's the day that I'm going to start rumors, spread misinformation, and make sure that people think this is what happened. Because it's disgusting going after the parents of a missing child. It doesn't matter how you look at it, it's disgusting. And I just don't understand people like that. That means that they did have him before Tyler even had a chance to discover he was missing. Tyler had no chance to rescue him. Yeah, it's really sad. I mean, I was having a conversation with BRANDI the other day, and she told me that GMC truck was leaving the neighborhood at 7:08, and it's right around the time that Tyler was in the van going around the neighborhood. She said, hell, they could have even passed each other. Like, that's how close Tyler was to his son, and he didn't even know it. Now, I'm not saying that they did pass each other, but it was all around that same time. Lori, thank you so much for coming and being here. I really do appreciate it. I love seeing new people here, old people here, hiding in the bushes. That's fine too. Marcia is here. Thank you so much for coming. Hi, Samantha, everyone in chat and mods. Don't forget, leave your touch DNA on that like button. Let's show Samantha some love. Thank you so much. And it really, really does help the algorithm get stuff out, helps bring awareness to Michael Vaughn. And I haven't said it in the last couple of lives, but please, please, please share Michael, share his smile, his beautiful face, his case. Talk about these 4 suspects on your social media, share a flyer, do whatever it is that you like to do when sharing something, and make sure that Michael Vaughn is seen all over social media. And people need to know somebody has been arrested, somebody has been charged, and he is going to trial. Somebody needs to know that Sarah Wandra will be charged and that she will be going to prison right after she gets out of prison, facing charges for Michael's abduction and murder and destruction of evidence. So much destruction of evidence, too, that we have learned from this preliminary hearing. It's crazy. They got rid of so much stuff. Okay, so we only have 2 videos to watch. I thought we had 3. Well, I did have 3, but one of them was 14 minutes long, and it wasn't anything but staring at that wall with the calendar on it. So they must have just let the feed run on that. So I have one that's almost an hour long, and I think the other one's only like 15 or 20 minutes. But it is the closing arguments and the judge's final decision, which we all already know that the judge found probable cause to send Stacy to trial. Yeah, going after the parents when there is no evidence is disgusting. It just adds to their pain. And it is painful for them to be accused. It really is. It's one of the reasons why Tyler doesn't, go on social media or say anything or go really before the news, because everything he says, and BRANDI even, everything they say gets used against them. So I am just going to get ready and start this video up. Thanks again for being here, being a part of Monkey's Army, supporting the Vaughn family. It's appreciated more than you know. So this video is 53 minutes. I'll put some closed caption on here. Let me make sure that this little calendar doesn't run forever. Nope, it doesn't. So I don't need to fast forward. I've got my iced coffee and my pen. If you see anything, let me know. I'll be keeping an eye on chat. So let's just go ahead and get at this. And here's the closing arguments from Stacy Wandra's preliminary hearing.
We are back on the record to take up the matter of State of Idaho v. Stacy Wandra. This is in case CR 3825-1295. Did have a meeting with council in my office when we, or about the time we were scheduled to take up this case. After lunch, I was informed by the state that they intended to file an amended complaint, which I received a couple of minutes ago. Has the defense seen the amended complaint?
We have, Your Honor.
Mr. Duke, if I could have you stand and raise your right hand to be sworn.
Yep.
Do you solemnly swear and or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Mr. Duke, do you swear and affirm that you believe there's a reasonable basis in fact and in the law to charge Mr. Wandra with these three amended, or these three charges from part 2 in this amended complaint?
I do, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Any objection from the defense to filing the amended complaint today?
Judge, we reviewed the amended complaint with our client and discussed with him the removal of premeditation, and this is now essentially felony murder. Explained that to him. And also the language in count 3, adding additional words. We have reviewed that with him, and we have no objection, and we would waive a formal reading.
And when you say you waive a formal reading, of course, my common practice is to tell someone in very common terms what that means, but I presume you've done that. I'm happy to do it again. Sometimes we replow the same ground just to be sure it's covered well, but I have no concerns for myself on that with regard to that. I'd also typically explain to a person when I read it or when I tell them about the charges in a complaint, amended or otherwise, what their rights are. Would you like me to remind your client of those things, or are you satisfied that he knows?
Judge, I don't believe that's necessary. Of course, I'll leave it in the court's discretion.
Yeah, no, I don't inherently think it's necessary. I mean, this is a carefully considered case. I said I would ask you, Mr. Wandra, I'm happy to read this complaint to you again if you want that. I'm also happy to go over your rights again if you want that.
I waive my rights, Your Honor.
What's that now?
I waive my rights.
Okay,
to do
correction.
that.
Well, you understand what your rights are, is really what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're satisfied that you've had enough time to speak with your counsel about that? All right, then, good enough. All right, so we've reached the time that the court.
So basically what happened is they're taking premeditation off of the table, but it's still a felony murder. Still same kind of charge. Nothing really changed except for really the wording, which was which kind of upset me during the preliminary hearing because it was premeditated. They did plan this out. Stacy Wandra was sitting at a splash pad looking for a child earlier that day, so he is premeditating throughout the day to kidnap a child. So the fact that that got dropped off of his charge, I mean, Stacy Wandra got lucky. He really did.
We're going to accept the amended complaint. It's my understanding from the conversation we had in my office that the state does not intend to call any more evidence, any more witnesses in this case. Is that right?
That's correct, Your Honor. The state press.
All right. And we discussed this in my office. It was my understanding there that the defense did not intend to make a presentation at the preliminary hearing.
That is correct.
Okay. Or an evidentiary presentation. All right, then. So as far as the court's concerned, then the evidence is closed. And we've arrived at the place where we receive, I would receive closing arguments about what that evidence means from the parties. Is the state ready to do that?
We are, Your Honor.
And is the defense ready to do that?
We are. Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Duke, what presentation would you like to make, sir?
Your Honor, in this case, so the standard for prelim is that there must be substantial evidence on all elements of the crime. And if the court believes a public offense has occurred, and that and then there is sufficient or probable evidence or enough for probable sufficient evidence to show that the defendant has committed it, then he must be bound over. In the state of Idaho, aiders and abettors are principals in any action. And the place I would start off is that ordinarily credibility is not really the main thrust or concern of a preliminary hearing. However, the evidence must be plausible. And as the court's aware in this case, there is a bridge that has to, or a gap that has to be bridged in the form that the confession that the state primarily relies on for its case, in that confession, Stacy Wandra indicated that the body of Michael Vaughn would be found in his backyard, and it wasn't. But the state, we still view his confession.
Damn, do you guys see these dirty go to hell looks Stacy Wandra is giving right now? Wow, Stacy. Why are you so mad? You a little bit worried?
Is credible, and that it does describe the actual events that occurred. But in order to bridge this problem of the body not being where he said it would be, there's a few things we would ask the court to look at. One, the body was buried, according to Stacy, on July 28th of July 28th of 2021. And it was not, the backyard was not searched until November of 2022. When he was asked in November what detectives could look at to corroborate his story as far as to verify the validity of it, he indicated the trike. The trike, so the trike comes into play because he says it was on some boxes in the garage. I hadn't seen it there before. At one point he says that the story of the trike came from law enforcement, not his memory. He then changes that story and says, I remember the trike being there. It was there, and then it was gone a couple days later. His neighbor, Carson Starkey, identifies the exact trike, or identifies a trike that's sitting behind the gate of the Wandra's property. Behind that gate is exactly where a live scent tracking dog showed interest when it was given the scent of Michael Vaughn in August, just after Michael had gone missing. That same tracking dog then showed interest down the bluffs in the brush there. One of the neighbors, Mr. Smith, he found the same trike identified through the exhibits, the exact same trike that Carson identified. He had found it, tried to use it for a project, and then when he realized it wasn't useful, he returned it behind the bluff sign. But the reality is that a piece of evidence that initially Stacy Wandra said he didn't know anything about, he then said it would corroborate his story. A live scent track dog followed that evidence when it was given the scent of Michael Vaughn. And so there's one component that shows some veracity to his statement that Michael was indeed put in the backyard. The other piece of evidence, or the next piece of evidence, are the cadaver dogs. Cadaver dogs are trained to alert to the scent of decomposing human remains. We had on testimony for the court, at least 2 certified dogs that alerted to the presence of human remains in the backyard of the Wandra's home. And so,
and just for those in the back, even the prosecuting attorney says that both of the cadaver dog handlers that testified in court did say that their dogs alerted to human remains in the backyard. That residual scent left behind after human remains has been moved. That is why the handlers were brought there by the state for the prosecutor to use them as a piece of evidence. Those cadaver dogs are part of the evidence. This trike is part of the evidence. Another piece of evidence that was taken from the Wandra's house and put down the bluff to never be seen again. They wanted to get rid of it. Why? Because they were worried that it was there at their house. Because maybe Michael had been seen, and then come to find out, yes, Michael was seen on the tricycle on Red Wing and Meadowlark right in front of their house. Another piece of evidence that the Wandras, that Brandon and Adrian all decided needed to be gone and away from the home. Destruction of evidence.
while not dispositive, it does show that at some point the scent of decomposing human remains was present in the Wandra's backyard. And then finally, Stacy, he identifies that at one point, Michael was given a green stuffed animal that they had used as a chew toy for their dogs in order to try to calm him down. Evidence that came in through Anita Kelleher was that Kay Ramsey, the owner of that property, or the mother of Sarah Wandra, said that the dog dug up a green ear of a chew toy, but that it got thrown away before they could collect the evidence. But all of these things go to show that Stacy's statements about the trike being in play, also this green chew toy, are corroborated by the evidence that law enforcement collected and through their investigative techniques. And there's also the reality that bodies can be moved. Every time law enforcement finds one, they move it to examine it. So this is something that is a thing that can occur. And so the first kind of main concern there, whether or not the fact that Michael was in the ground, we would ask the court to find that the confession is still plausible and that it still meets the criteria and the evidentiary standards, because it's the theory of the state that the body was moved after it was buried, according to Stacy's own comments. Next, looking at the actual confession that Stacy gave, what the court heard through the last 2.5 days.
When the defense attorney says Stacy's confession, Stacy rolls his eyes and nods his head a little bit. Let's rewind just a little bit right here so you guys can see it. Maybe you already just did, but it's just kind of funny because he hates it being called a confession by anybody. Why? Because he's tried to convince us all that it wasn't a confession and that he was interrogated to the point of a false confession.
Next, looking at the actual confession that Stacy gave, what the court heard.
Yeah, he did not like that too much, did he?
Through the last 2.5 days is what it sounds like when a man believes that somebody is, well, so there are 4 people in that household that are present when Michael Vaughn is kidnapped and abducted and then taken to CUNA. What the court heard was Mr. Wandra's attempt to gain the benefit of a deal by cooperating with law enforcement whilst trying to write himself out of the story. He's very thoughtful at times, and as he goes through, his story does change, but the story changes when he's given details that law enforcement have identified, point to untruths that he is telling in his confession. And so as he tries to write himself out of the story, and one of the most clear ones here, as he says, they went to Ontario. The other people in the house did go to Ontario, but they came back before Michael was missing. And so and this is consistent with many of the details in his confession, that he tries to paint himself as a mere observer or spectator in the events that occurred in that home. But going through what it means to actually aid and abet, or what it means to be a principal in any case. Mere proximity is not enough. There must be the same culpable intent as the primary actors, as well as one of the descriptions uses community of purpose and the unlawful undertaking. Mere presence, acquiescence, or silent consent is insufficient. And so here, what we have is, well, looking at some of the case law here, because it's actually it's a unique legal obstacle for us to get over, or when Stacy denies that he was actually wanting the things to happen that happened in that home and relating to Michael, it presents an interesting legal challenge. It's actually pretty clever by Mr. Wandra, frankly. But the case law, so there's 2 cases in particular that I draw the court's attention to. One is State v. Colpitts, and in that, 2 individuals, Madsen and Colpitts, go to a 3rd individual, Mr. Fignani's house, and Mr. Colpitts kills Mr. Fignani. The question becomes, was Miss Madsen a co-conspirator, or did she aid and abet in that by accompanying him to the property and to his apartment where the murder took place? And one of the questions the courts asked is, did she know that that was the intent of the individual who committed the murder? And was she aware that that was going to happen? And they said it was properly an issue for a jury because she testified that she didn't know he had a gun and didn't know that's what he wanted to do. And the reason I point out those facts is because what the court seems to be interested in that case is whether or not there's foreknowledge that a criminal enterprise was going to take place. Whether or not she was aware that he intended or was engaging in criminality. Similarly, in and I'm not good at the last name here, State v. Sensenig, there's an individual who meets up with a man and his stepson, and they start their enterprise together around 5 in the afternoon, are not doing anything criminal. Around midnight, the stepson and this third party drop the father off. He engages in some burglaries, and then they come pick him up about 15 to 20 minutes later. The court identified 2 components here that they examined, and they determined that it was an issue for the jury. But they looked at a statement he had made, or a statement that the stepson had made while the father was not in the car and while he was engaged in his burglary. He said that his father was the stealingest man in the country. And so the courts acknowledged that that might give some indicator. And then the question was, did this third party who was with them, were they aware when they went to pick him up that he was engaged in the act of burglary when they went to pick him up? And again, in that case, what the court seemed to be looking at is, did the aider and abetter know that they were participating in some criminal act?
Did the aider or abettor know that they were participating in some criminal act? Listen up, Brandon Shirtliff. This alone, the aiding and abetting, just participating in the criminal act of getting into the GMC truck with Michael in the bed of the truck, even though you say you did not abduct Michael, you did not murder Michael, you still made the decision to get in that truck, and you came up with an idea and created an alibi, also corroborated by Stacy, to take Michael to your mother's house where cadaver dogs hit, where you also proceeded to tell Stacy you left Michael in your mother's spare room. Several stories, because even the prosecuting attorney mentions Michael being left outside overnight. The fact is, you still made the decision to participate in a criminal act by going in the GMC truck and going to Cuna to your mom's house. Listen up, Brandon.
And so moving to the facts of our case, and with that in mind, and one treatise puts it well, they say, and this is just persuasive, it's a treatise on the subject, but they said that with foreknowledge comes the opportunity to abandon the criminal enterprise or to not engage at all. Meaning that you have a choice when you know beforehand what's going to happen. In this case, kidnapping is an ongoing crime, and it is not completed until the return of the victim or until the victim is dead, and so it's no longer a kidnapping at that point. In this case, Mr. Wandra's statements are very clear. Michael Vaughn was alive when he was brought into the home, and where Mr. Wandra first identifies him, or first sees him. He's told, we've just taken this kid. He uses the word abduct, but he said, I think she said took, but they mean the same thing. So he accepts that what has just occurred is an abduction or a kidnapping. And then he observes while the child is duct taped, placed into a duffel bag, and stored in the living room as he claims he's arguing, or he's saying, he's used the word, this is fucked up, what are we doing? And so his testimony is that he objects at this point, but he very much knows that a kidnapping has just occurred, that Sarah Wandra is one of the people who is committing that Adrian Lucini is one of the people, and that Brandon Shirtliff, that those three individuals have just kidnapped a child and have placed him in a duffel bag. Stacy Wandra knows when he gets in the truck that Michael Vaughn is in that duffel bag in the back of the truck. When he leaves the house with those two individuals, Sarah Wandra and Brandon Shirtliff, he knows that they're engaged in the act of kidnapping.
And do you hear what the prosecuting attorney just said, Brandon? He named you, Sarah and Adrian, as the three people that kidnapped Michael Vaughn. You are now considered to be a kidnapper, an abductor, a predator, a murderer. I hope you are listening. Brandon, so many decisions you need to start making, and you better make them quick, because I really think you need to do it before Stacy's trial starts. Who knows? He might decide to testify against you when you get arrested, because he's saying he didn't do anything. He witnessed you, Sarah, and Adrian doing everything. He did nothing, remember?
And he knows that it's still ongoing because he describes hearing Michael scream when they stop on 8th. And so he knows Michael's still alive and he's still going with them. One of the statements that he made is that they were trying to establish an alibi. He comments on the use of the word alibi because he says, well, in this case, it's true, so it's not an alibi. That's not the actual legal definition of an alibi, but the meaning of the words he uses shows that he understands what it is they're trying to do, which is create a story that hides the fact that they're involved in Michael's disappearance. And he explicitly states that the alibi was to convince people they didn't know what happened to Michael, but that wasn't true. They did know what happened to Michael. That's how he phrases it. And so they established that alibi before they even leave. And the testimony that came in was that Brandon Shirtliff said the reason they went to CUNA was for an alibi. And we know that that's accurate because the first statement of Stacy's that Detective Kelleher reviewed was a statement that said they left at around 5 and that they weren't in the area when Michael went missing. Well, later that was determined to not be true, but that just goes to show that when he went with them to CUNA, he was helping them establish an alibi, and the alibi was to tow a car back. He brought the chain, the tow strap. During the course of that enterprise, when they're bringing the car back and I believe the tow strap breaks, he's the one who fixes it so they can complete that maneuver. And the important thing here is that he said the purpose of that was so people wouldn't know they were involved with Michael. One of the elements of kidnapping is to secretly convey a child to another place. And so he is maintaining the secret nature of the kidnapping when they establish the alibi so that it covers the actual actions that they're taking. When they stop on 8th, Stacy says he filled up the power steering fluid. Again, he is assisting and facilitating the transportation of Michael Vaughn because he's making sure that the vehicle is operating normally. And the reason that's important is because in order to take Michael away, to get him to a place where people aren't looking for him, they've got to drive and they need a vehicle that's functioning properly. And so he makes sure that their vehicle is functioning properly in order to get Michael out of the area. He also comments that he hears him screaming and it's muffled, but he makes another statement during his confession. He says that he was just the DJ. But if you're worried about the sound that a child makes when they're duct taped in a bag, the only way to hide that, apart from remedying the situation of a child being in the bag, is to cover that sound with a louder sound. He said he was playing music. That is actually evidence that he was trying to further conceal the fact that Michael was with them in the truck. When they're stopped at 8th, in his testimony, he said that there was a discussion and they said, they got to get out of here, no more stops. And so again, there's conversations about what to do about the fact that they've got Michael Vaughn in their vehicle. And another component of someone who's aiding and abetting is if they counsel with the other principals. And several times throughout his testimony, he says Sarah would ask what to do. Now, he always responded with, got to call the cops. But then he goes with them to CUNA. And so even though he says, oh, do this thing, that's the right thing to do at this point in time, his actions do not match the words he's using. He still goes with them. And so the court is allowed to infer his criminal mindset and is allowed to look at his actions, even if they're not consistent with the words that he uses. And his actions are consistent with being in a, and I apologize, his actions are consistent with being in the same joint enterprise as the people who are committing the other primaries committing the actual kidnapping. Next, so in order to be an aider and abetter, the fact inquiry is what happens before and during the commission of the crime. But in this case, we do have some details that happen after the commission of the crime that go to show what his intent was during the commission. And so he calls Brandon and he says, we're in trouble, we need to get our story straight. And they maintain their alibi that they're just transporting or towing the Mercedes. Even though that conversation happens afterwards, we know that that's the story they had given consistently and that is what they actually did in order to create the alibi. And so the statement he makes later shows that he was indeed trying to help create an alibi when he went with Sarah Wandra and Brandon Shurtleff to CUNA to take Michael over there. And then finally on the issue of his joining in a community of purpose with Sarah and Brandon, his mindset is part of the element of whether or not he's an aider and abetter. And again, while not dispositive, the phone call he makes with his mother is very revealing. He shows a great deal of remorse. And what that indicates is that his mindset at the time he was with Sarah Wandra and Brandon Shurtleff is that he feels like he was engaged in a common scheme with them, that and so the words the courts use is community of purpose. His level of remorse is commiserate with being in a community of purpose with people who are conducting a kidnapping. Now, we know that Michael dies as a result of this kidnapping because Stacy tells us that. He also tells his mom that. He says he was accidentally suffocated. There was too much clothes on top of him. He explicitly describes watching as they put the clothes on top of Michael in the duffel bag. He observed that thing, and he watched Michael get transported and assisted in transporting Michael while he was in that condition.
I mean, you could even look at this in a totally different way, too. Okay, Sarah came in. Sarah, Adrian, Brandon kidnapped Michael. Well, at the moment that Stacy Wondra decides to get in the truck and take Michael on to CUNA, yes, aiding and abetting, but isn't he at that point also abducting Michael? He is a part of that, and that is what is being said here. Stacy Wandra is a part of it all because he makes the decision not to call the police. He watches and does nothing, and then he helps with the tow. He creates an alibi later on, or they create an alibi together before, and then he continues to talk about the alibi, which was towing back Brandon Shirtleff's car. That alibi is corroborated with both of them. Even Brandon says that's what they did. They came up with this alibi. Brandon Shirtleff is the one who is handing them the duffel bag. Brandon is also the one who gets into the truck and goes to Cuna. He's the one who says, we can use my mom's house because she's out of town. I don't know. I just sat in this courtroom listening to Mike Duke talk, and all I was thinking to myself at that time was, wow, this picture that he is painting is amazing. And at the same time, I am just, me and my daughter were holding hands so tight during this time because we just wanted Stacy Wandra to have to go to trial. I mean, everything that Mike Duke is saying is so on point, right down to what Juanita Kelleher said, the detective, and what he is saying here, that Stacy Wandra putting the power steering fluid in the truck helped get the truck to Cuna. Brandon Shirtleff admitted on my panel to helping Stacy put the power steering in the truck. So I'm sure during your trial, Brandon, they'll be bringing that up also. Making the decision to go to Cuna, coming up with all those ideas, Brandon, these are the reasons why you will be charged.
And so on the final thing I would say on the issue of whether or not he sufficiently joined in the illegal enterprise, is that the language that the courts use, they say mere proximity, they talk about bystanders. In this case, this isn't the person he's recently met. These aren't people who he's accidentally fallen in with. This is his wife and his friend, whom he is asked to try to assist him in siring a child with his wife. These are people he knows well. And so when he describes them as asking him things like, what should we do with him? And he says, call the cops. We got to do something about this. The reality is that he is consulting with them. And even if nobody takes that advice, he is still consulting with them. And that makes sense because these are people he lives with. These are people he lives his life with. These are people he is engaged in business with. And so all of that is to say that Stacy Wandra is engaged in the same criminal enterprise, the same community of purpose as Sarah and Brandon. And that is abundantly clear by the fact that he goes with them and assists them. Finally, speaking just on the facts, we have a pretty good idea of what happens to Michael up until he's moved from the Wandra's yard. Stacy describes that he's brought into the house by Sarah. He says she's gripping him tightly, and that detail matters because if a child is trying to get away or doesn't want to be held, you would have to grip him tightly. He talks about hearing the duct tape and then seeing Michael Vaughn with duct tape on his wrists and his ankles and over his mouth. When asked if he was resisting, he said, well, yeah, he was squirming. So he describes what it would be like for a child to struggle, but there are at least two grown adults putting him in this bag. He describes how he's too big for the bag, and so they had to bend his knees, and he describes it with a toe and a boot and demonstrates it to law enforcement. He describes how Michael is taken to the truck. Now, the fact that he's put in the bed of the truck, well, it makes sense when they stop on 8th Street, that they don't know what to do with him, and that's where he was originally found. That's what Stacy's testimony is that he was found on 9th, but they stopped right outside that neighborhood and they checked to see if Michael's alive. If their intent was to try to abandon their criminal enterprise and drop Michael off, it would make sense to have him in the back of the truck where they could just drop him off and leave. But when Brandon goes.
Wow. I have gone over this twice now, and I'm just hearing that. It's one of the reasons why I listen to things over and over and over again, because you never know what you're going to hear. We heard the defense attorney talk to Detective Kelleher about it. You know, is it credible that you could actually put a child, a 5-year-old, in a duffel bag? And is it credible that you would put that duffel bag in the bed of the truck? And she says, of course, yes. Well, here you have Mr. Mike Duke saying maybe the reason why, and I'm not using his words, I'm just saying maybe the reason why Michael is put in the bed of the truck in the duffel bag when they leave is because, well, it says right here, they could just drop him off and leave. Was their intention to drop him off on 8th in Arizona? 8th in Arizona is where they stopped. 9th in Arizona, so 1 block over, was where they took Michael. Were they thinking about leaving Michael right there? Could that be the reason why Michael Vaughn was in the bed of that truck? And I like the way that Mike put this, because I get this question all the time. Why would they have the duffel bag in the back of the truck? Why wouldn't they just have him in the truck with them? Wouldn't they be worried about him moving, screaming, any of that, or anybody hearing him, you know, while they're on their way to Cuna? And this here, bless you, baby, this here makes sense. Whether that is their actual intent or not, it does make sense. That if you were just going to stop and drop them off, they had changed their mind, they had panicked, they're done, let's just drop them off, okay? And so they put him in the bed of the truck, so it was easier for them to get out of the truck and go to the back of the truck and let him out. The problem here is, if that was their intention, why didn't they do it? Tyler was looking for Michael while they were on their way out of the neighborhood, screaming for him, hollering for him. Michael could have maybe even heard somebody calling for him. Maybe Michael got louder. Or maybe somebody was near in a car watching them. Something scared them, and they decide, you know, we're out of here. We're not going to do this. We're going to get busted. I never heard Mike Duke talk about the reason why they could have put Michael in the bed of the truck, and this is plausible. This is a very good theory, and I know that I have spoken to many, many, many people that believe that that is the real reason why they pulled over to the side of the road, was to let Michael go. And maybe, just maybe, if one of the other suspects comes forward, they could give that kind of truth to law enforcement. But right now, all it is theory. All it is speculation. All it is us asking ourselves questions, because there is no other suspects coming forward and talking as of yet. Right?
To check on him right after that discussion, or right after that happens, they have a discussion, they say, we got to get out of here, we got to go. So an argument that whether or not it's credible to put Michael in the back of the truck, I would argue that it makes sense. Granted, credibility is not an issue here. Once they convey Michael, they go to CUNA and they put him on the side of the house and they leave him there. Stacy's adamant that he's still alive at this point, but then
The questions about the duct tape. I believe they duct tape. This is my personal opinion. I believe they duct tape Michael to keep, because he was being so erratic. He was fighting so hard and he was screaming. And I really think that they did that to keep him quiet and keep him from stop moving so he couldn't go anywhere. And yes, maybe they put him into the duffel bag. They put the clothes in the duffel bag, and it was their decision that they were leaving. They were taking him to CUNA. That was the idea. Maybe they didn't even come up with the idea that they were going to stop and just let him loose until they actually start putting Michael into the truck. Or I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question, you guys. But I think that's the reason why they duct taped him. And maybe one of them, that could be the reason why they didn't. Maybe Brandon went back to the back of the truck, opened up the bag, realized he's got duct tape. Oh my God, they're going to catch us. This has our fingerprints on it. Gets back into the car. Dude, we can't do this. Who knows? Like I said, it's going to take other suspects coming forward to give the full story about what actually happened, or we're just going to have to keep believing Stacy Wandra.
they get into their vehicles and they leave. They tow the Mercedes. Brandon's the one driving that. They tow the Mercedes, tow strap breaks. They get back into Fruitland, and then they just start trying to blend in. The court heard evidence that they put the picture on the fridge to try to blend in with everyone else. So they had a picture of Michael in the house, and he described that as an effort to blend in. After Michael goes missing, a series of actions are taken in that household. They get rid of 2 of the 3 cars that they're driving, both of which are implicated in having been used or involved in the kidnapping of Michael. They get rid of their phones. The testimony, I believe, that was elicited from Detective Kelleher is that Stacy destroyed one of the SIM cards, and he said, "I don't want them following me." At the time that this occurs, they've had interviews with law enforcement. They've made statements to the effect of, "We're in trouble. We need to get our alibi straight." And so so he knows that he's being looked at by law enforcement when he makes the decision to break that SIM card. They get rid of their furniture. And their text messages of that day are deleted. At the end of the day, what the court has before it is a man who felt pressured because he thought he was giving a competing confession to his wife. The statement was elicited that during a phone call, she said, "I won't testify against you." And he said, "I won't testify against you." Clearly, there's concern from both of them that they would testify against one another. He wanted the benefit of a deal, but he didn't want to implicate himself. He even told the detectives when they began questioning him, and he wasn't talking about Michael very much, and they said, "You're not really giving us much," or I'm paraphrasing here. And he said, "Well, it's like the Miranda thing. I'm going to get hemmed up." So he is letting them know, because the Miranda warning is that anything you say will be used against you. He's letting them know that if he tells them the story, it's not good for him legally. He understands that. And based on the story that he gives, he tries to walk that line, and he's pretty clever about it, frankly. He writes himself out of every bit of every event, every piece of evidence. He says, "No, I didn't destroy things. That was them." Or at least he tries to, but he makes a few errors along the way. He does make the error when he says, trying to say that he wasn't there when Michael was abducted. He says, "I remember," when talking about 8th Street, and then backs up and says, "I mean, Sarah told me." Over the course of that interview, when he was confronted with the fact that his story was not possible, what he ended up with was something closer to the truth. As he told more of the story that incriminated him more details became corroborated, not less. And so what we're asking this court to do today is bind over Mr. Wandra for his participation in kidnapping Michael Vaughn, a 5-year-old child at the time, and also bind him over on the felony murder rule on first-degree murder because Michael Vaughn died during the commission of that felony or as a result of that felony, and also to bind him over on the destruction of evidence as the number of attempts to get rid of normal objects in their lives is staggering. To get rid of your cars, your phones, your furniture. They took every effort imaginable to try to hide from this crime. And they were very good at it, frankly, but not perfect. And we're asking the court to bind them over on the evidence that it's heard during the course of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Geddes, would you like to make a closing?
Thank you, Judge. Some of what the state talks about is accurate. And Mr. Duke talks about how we have a unique obstacle to get over in this case. It's true. There is a gap between the evidence and the charges, and they have to overcome that, and they haven't done it. He talks about, at some length, there's this gap between when we think the body was buried November 28th to when we dug up the yard in November. So we just surmise that he must have been moved. Okay, that's called guessing. Body was never found. Talks about the tricycle and what happened with the tricycle. Guessing. The cadaver dogs. They alert. Okay, what does that tell us? That there was a body, perhaps, in that location. Was it Michael's? We don't actually know that. Does the state think it was? Does Detective Kelleher think it was? It's called guessing. We don't actually know because no body was discovered. We have no body, we have no parts of a body, nothing. No blood. They looked repeatedly. They grabbed every stain they could find. Nothing was located. So they're guessing. Green dog toy. Well, someone who didn't testify today told someone that, yeah, we found an ear from a chew toy and it's green. Okay. What does that tell us? Absolutely nothing. Guessing. They move on to the confession. They keep calling it a confession. It is not a confession. Nowhere does Stacy Wondra confess to anything. Prosecutor says, talks about a lot of things. Wilt's trying to write himself out of the story. Except he's amazingly consistent about that. He never once says, I did this, or I did that, or I did the other. What he says repeatedly is what I saw others do, what Sarah told me. And so Detective Kelleher says, well, I don't believe that. Okay, she's entitled to that, but it's called guessing. Prosecutor has cited some cases to you. In the first one he cited, there was actually a body. There was evidence of a crime. We don't have Michael's body in this case. We have absolutely no idea what has happened to him. Frankly, we don't even know if he's deceased. Maybe you think he is, maybe Detective Kelleher believes he is, maybe the state believes he is, but we don't actually have any evidence that he's actually deceased. In the second case, they cite he's hanging out with the stealingest man in the county. Okay. That's not particularly applicable to this case. Stacy isn't saying, well, my wife's the kidnappingest, murderingest woman in the state. He has no idea what she's up to, has no idea what she's about to do. To commit a crime in the state of Idaho or in any state in the United States of America, there has to be a union, right? A union between intent and an act. Mens rea, that intent, and the actus rea, the act. The state has to establish probable cause that Stacy Wondra had the intent, and then he followed up with that intent, and he acted upon it. Nowhere have they established that union of mens rea and actus rea. They have guessed at it. They have guessed that he's not telling everything that he knows or that he's not being entirely honest. It's guessing. Nowhere in this case does Stacy say, I did this, or I was involved in it. He's stunned, he's shocked, he's appalled, and he doesn't know what to do. He's stuck in a nightmare that he didn't see coming, and he didn't know what to do about it. That's not murder. That's not kidnapping. It's trouble, but it's not a crime. We get to this issue of duty to report. And this is sometimes hard for civilians to kind of wrap their mind around, Judge. But a citizen has absolutely zero obligation to report a crime. Period. There are no qualifiers to that. Now, there are some mandatory reporters. Even attorneys can be mandatory reporters if we believe we've received information that someone's about to be in imminent peril or perhaps death. The ethical obligations we're under requires us to report that. There are certain mandatory reporters, doctors, for instance, counselors have to report sexual abuse, things like that. There are mandatory reporters, but regular citizens going about their business have zero duty to report a crime. And there's no criminal liability that comes appurtenant to fail to report a crime. That's the law. Now, we can talk at great length about our moral obligation or our ethical obligation, very subjective topics that we can debate all day long, but we're in a court of law. And in a court of law, it's not a moral obligation. We don't get charged with a crime for failing morally not to tell someone about something that we see. There's no criminal liability there. Stacy Wondra gets caught up in something and he doesn't report it, and he regrets it terribly, but that is not a crime. We've talked at some length about shared criminal intent, community purpose, aiding and abetting, co-conspirators essentially, right? Stacy is not charged with aiding and abetting. He's not charged as a co-conspirator. Prosecutors, right? Co-conspirators are considered principals, but he's not actually charged with that. He's charged with felony murder. He's charged with kidnapping. And in the course of that kidnapping, the child dies, so that makes it felony murder. That there was a shared criminal intent, a community of purpose. There was no such thing. And back to their initial statement of this is a unique obstacle for us to get over, it's true. Because they have to figure out how to make him a co-conspirator, because he isn't. By his own words, by everything he said, he had nothing to do with this. They walk into the house with this child, and he's like, what the fuck? He had no idea. and he was appalled, and he was shocked, and he didn't know what to do about it. That does not make him an aider and abetter. That does not give him community of purpose. He had no idea. And the prosecutor stretches these things. Well, you know, he had straps in the back of his truck, so that's the perpetuation of the kidnapping. No, it's not. The child was already kidnapped, and he had nothing to do with it. They were going to tow a car. They had to stop because the brakes weren't working. He put brake fluid in the car. Detective Kelleher says, well, that's fixing the car so they can kidnap the child. The child was already kidnapped. Standard jury instruction for aiding and abetting in the state of Idaho makes it clear, absent a duty to report, which Stacy did not have, his presence during, even his acquiescence in, or even his silent consent to a crime is not sufficient for him to be guilty of a crime. There has to be this shared criminal intent, this community of purpose, like we've talked about, this joining of mens rea and actus rea. And there isn't that community. There isn't that union. That also brings us to the lack of evidence in this case. And I get it, Judge. It's a bad case. It's ugly. It's hard. This is every parent's worst nightmare. We so desperately want to find Michael Vaughn. We so desperately want to know what happened to him. His mother and father, his family and friends, they are entitled to their grief and their anger and their outrage. Nothing I say here today takes that away from them. What I'm here to say is that that doesn't make him guilty. We so desperately want to know what happened. We so desperately want to hold someone accountable, but that doesn't mean you meet the elements of probable cause to these offenses. There are no witnesses, Judge, in this case that say, yeah, I was on 9th Street or Arizona or 8th Street or wherever, and I saw Michael Vaughn and I saw this maroon GMC pickup pull up, and then I didn't see Michael Vaughn anymore. There are no witnesses like that. None, zero. No admissions or confessions or incriminating statements from Stacy. I know that Detective Kelleher doesn't believe him. That's not enough. That's guessing. No forensics of any kind. They did all the forensics. We had 20,000 pages of discovery plus. The Idaho State Police were heavily involved. They went over everything with a fine-tooth comb. The FBI was involved. Every available resource was tied into this case. And not one piece of forensic evidence was found related to Stacy or anybody else. Cars, clean. Houses, clean. Nothing. Piece of duct tape in the back of a truck. I would encourage you to find a truck in the state of Idaho that doesn't have a piece of duct tape in it. But that piece of duct tape could have had DNA. Michael's DNA, some skin, some blood maybe, fingerprints, whatever. Nothing. No forensics of any kind. All of the state's resources, all of the federal government's resources poured into this case, and nothing indicates Stacy had anything to do with the abduction of this child. No physical evidence. Judge, this is incredibly important to the case, and we haven't really talked about it a lot. But there's always physical evidence, right? Something that connects the perpetrator to the crime. Examples would be, an easy example would be the shirt that we knew he was wearing found in the trunk of Stacy's car, or in the backyard of his house where he's living, or in the crawl space under his house. A shoe that was known to be Michael's found in the truck. Simple, basic thing, evidence that connects a perpetrator to a crime. There is nothing of the sort. the state comes to the court today and says, we think we know what happened. We think the child was kidnapped, and we think Stacy had something to do with it. And we think he was held in the house, and he was in a car, and he was taken to Brandon's mom's house, and he was buried in the backyard. All those things are guesses. And we can't bind over a case, first-degree murder, or any charge, frankly, on a guess. I would submit to the court that you can't take a 5-year-old boy. I'm sorry, I just find that incredibly unbelievable that you're going to take a wriggling, kicking, screaming 5-year-old, stuff him in a duffel bag. You're going to kick his way out. He's going to thrash his way out. People are going to hear. People are going to see. I just don't find that believable. But even if you find it believable, there would be evidence. There would be evidence of his skin, of his blood, of his. I'm not a CSI. The epithelials, whatever the material from your skin. They would be on the couch. They would be on the carpet. They would be everywhere he was. He was supposedly in the back of a truck in a duffel bag. Canines don't alert on that truck. That's not believable. No evidence, no forensic evidence found in the yard, in Brandon's mother's yard, in Brandon's mother's house. It surpasses reason to think that a little boy was kidnapped and died and buried, and they didn't find.
I'm sorry, I'm not pausing to give any commentary with this defense attorney because he pisses me off and I'm too aggravated to say anything. But I will say this. Notice that this entire time that he talks about guessing and no evidence or anything, he never mentions or talks about the scent dogs or cadaver dogs. Why? Because he knows that is evidence. There is evidence. You have to have probable cause and evidence to submit to a judge to even charge somebody with a crime. Information had to be submitted in order to charge and arrest Stacy Wandra. And if there wasn't enough there, then that arrest and those charges wouldn't even exist. And then after that, you still have to have enough evidence to prove that there's probable cause to go to trial, which we all know there's going to be a trial. So all of this guessing, all of this no evidence, all of that stuff doesn't make sense to me. I can't stand this defense attorney at all.
Anything. And I hate that as much as anybody. But that doesn't mean that a crime has been committed by Stacy Wandra. There has to be that nexus between the intent and the act, and there has to be that evidence that connects those things, and there just simply isn't. You may not like it, may not believe it, but at the end of the day, what Detective Kelleher thinks, what the state thinks, it doesn't matter. It's what they can prove. And they haven't proven anything. And it's not a trial. It doesn't have to be beyond a reasonable doubt. Is it more likely than not that Stacy Wondra kidnapped that child and he died in the perpetration of that kidnapping? No. They have not submitted evidence that even establishes probable cause. A common theme, Judge, throughout this case is Detective Kelleher hits him hard on this in the interviews. His mom, who they used to get information out of him, she hits him hard. What did you do?
Who cares that they used his mom to get information from him? They knew Stacy loved his mom. They knew he would talk to his mom. Who cares if law enforcement wanted to use Tamara or tell her, hey, we know Stacy's lying to us. Is there any way that you can just talk to him? We know he did this. Whatever the conversation was, who cares? She is an amazing woman who wanted nothing but justice for Michael Joseph Vaughn, to the point where she tells her own son, man up and tell the truth, and I'll be here for you.
Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you call? You must be accountable for your part, Mom says. You must be a man, Mom says. You made a mistake, Mom says. What that's referring to is his cowardice. This is why he's crying. This is why he's remorseful. This is why he's upset. Because something horrific happened, he didn't stop it. He was a coward. That also has no criminal liability attached to it. Being a coward is not a crime.
Did you see that look that Stacy gives his attorney after his attorney calls him a coward a few times? That pissed Stacy off. 1000%.
Judge, even if you believe everything that Stacy Wondra said, and I don't think we can believe any of it, changes his story constantly, lies constantly. Much of what he says just simply isn't believable. And all of his story that is put together about what he saw and where Michael Vaughn was and what happened, none of that is corroborated by evidence. If any of it.
Everything is corroborated by the cadaver dogs. Like I said at the beginning of the live, Stacy says that Michael was buried in the Wandra's yard. Cadaver dogs hit there. Stacy says that Michael was taken to Cuna. Cadaver dogs hit there. Stacy says that Michael was transported, was unalive from Cuna to Fruitland. Dogs hit on the Lexus. Police believe that Michael was moved from the Wandra's backyard. Cadaver dogs hit on the Lexus. Things are corroborated by the cadaver dogs. And I do believe that there is evidence. They don't have to show all of what they have during a preliminary hearing. All of what they have is 20,000 pages of discovery and evidence, and they're going to use that during the trial. That is what trial is for.
Even a bit of it was corroborated with any evidence, game on. But it hasn't been. Nothing. Even if you believe everything he says, he still didn't commit a crime. This is not guessing court. This is not hopeful court. This is not, we have a pretty good idea of court. This is a court of law. And a court of law requires evidence to prove a crime. And they haven't done that. And I know it's hard. But they have to prove it, and they haven't. And you cannot bind it over to district court. I would concede there is probable cause, there is evidence for count 3, destruction of evidence. Related to phones, SIM card, other things. I concede that. That's the only crime they've established probable cause to proceed.
How can you say that there is no evidence of a crime that Stacy, they have produced no evidence whatsoever that Stacy's done anything wrong, and then turn around and say, but there is evidence to prove that there was destruction of evidence? And The destruction of evidence is huge in Michael Vaughn's case by these suspects, because all of the evidence that they got rid of was everything that could point fingers at the Wandras, at Brandon, and at Adrian. That doesn't make sense to me. Destruction of the evidence that can convict me, that can have DNA, that could have digital fingerprints, whatever it was, DNA on the couch from Michael Vaughn or whatever. Destruction of evidence. He's guilty of that, his defense attorney says, but there's no evidence to prove that Stacy Wandra has done anything wrong. It just, that does not make sense to me.
All right, thank you. I'm going to take this under advisement for a few minutes, come back on and announce a decision. It's my intention to do that this afternoon. We'll be in recess.
Please rise.
Okay, so that was the end of that one. I just got done pulling up the other video, but right, hair curlers and crime, what? This is crazy. He said that he destroyed evidence, but he didn't do a crime. Make it make sense. You destroyed the evidence that would be used against you in the court of law to charge you, to convict you, but yet there's no evidence of a crime. There is no crime. Stacy did nothing. It doesn't make sense. It's just like Kelly, I was just going to say that, Kelly, it's BS. I wasn't muted. I was just getting stuff put up and everything. And, okay, you guys can hear me now. I wasn't muted. I was just stopping the video, pulling up another video, taking a second. This defense attorney really just upsets me. I don't like the way he even talked about Michael Vaughn, we don't even know if Michael Vaughn is dead. Yes, we do, because law enforcement said so. Law enforcement said that they have evidence and believe that Michael Vaughn is deceased. They have evidence. I don't care what kind of law enforcement you are, okay? What agency you work for. No agency is going to come to a family and talk about their child being deceased if they don't have proof of it. It does not make any sense. Yes, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence in Michael's case, but there is evidence here. Stacy did lie. He did create a lot of stories. Stacy is a habitual liar, but there is truth in some of the things that he has said. And police have been able to prove that this far. They would have never been able to even charge Stacy Wandra. Let me look over here at this video. Well, I'll just put it up. I don't think it's very long. And we are getting to the end, because this here is the judge's final decision. It's only 12 minutes long. And let me just make sure we're not sitting here for forever. Yep. I'm going to have to fast forward until we get to where, okay, right about here. It's just, I just don't like this defense attorney. I don't like anything he has to say. I don't, I think he's really insulting, especially going at law enforcement about things. The way he went at the cadaver dog handlers for things when they're experts. They're expert handlers. That's what they did for a living. And yeah, I'm not going to keep talking about him. I just cannot stand him. Even BRANDI left chat because she doesn't want to listen to him anymore. All right, so let's start this video up. Oh, let me put on some captions here. And hear the judge's ruling. I know one thing that defense did was piss this judge off, talking about guessing and all of that kind of stuff, because the judge addresses what the defense attorney says. You know, this isn't guessing court. This isn't this court. Yeah, I think he upset the judge.
Go ahead and be seated. So we are back on the record again to take up the matter of State of Idaho v. Stacy Wandra in CR 38251295. Time has come to render a decision in this case, or announce a decision. That's what the court intends to do. Is the state ready?
Yes, sir.
The defense?
We are.
Before I do, this is an unusual proceeding. Preliminary hearings don't normally consume this amount of time and resources. I appreciate the decorum and the dignity shown by everyone that came and was here for much of the trial. Certainly the professionalism of the marshals in maintaining a good order, and the preparation and skill of counsel in making the presentation of this case. Mr. Wandra faces in this matter for preliminary hearing today 3 counts, 3 alleged violations of law: murder in the first degree, kidnapping in the second degree, and destruction or alteration or concealment of evidence about to be discovered in the investigation of the commission of a felony crime. The question before us is not the question that's asked at the end of a trial. And, at a preliminary hearing, there are specific questions being asked. The evidence must meet or must answer those questions in order for a case to proceed to trial at all. The first of those questions under Criminal Rule 5.1 is whether or not a public offense has been committed. And then thereafter, is there probable or sufficient cause to believe that the defendant committed those offenses? In order to make that finding, a judge must find that the probable cause has been presented, and it must be based on substantial evidence on every material element of the offense charged, or in this case, the offenses charged. The evidence presented in this case supports the conclusion that Michael Vaughn was abducted, he was secreted away, and he was killed in the course of being secreted away. The evidence goes on to show that subsequent to and during those events, evidence of the crimes was destroyed, altered, or concealed. In making findings of probable cause in this case, or in any case, the court relies primarily on the criminal code, the statutes by which a person is alleged to have committed a crime. The court also relies heavily on the jury instructions that the Supreme Court has promulgated for making decisions about any particular charge. A particular utility in this case is Idaho Criminal Jury Instruction 311 and 312. 311 says that the law makes no distinction between a person who directly participates in the acts constituting a crime and a person who either before or during its commission intentionally aids, assists, facilitates, promotes, encourages, counsels, solicits, invites, helps, or hires another to commit a crime with the intent to promote or assist in its commission. Both can be found guilty of the crime. Mere presence at, acquiescence in, or silent consent to the planning or commission of a crime is not, in the absence of a duty to act, sufficient to make one a principal. An accomplice is what it says, but we're talking about principal liability for criminal acts. Idaho Criminal Jury Instruction 312 says that all persons who participate in a crime, either before or during its commission, by intentionally aiding, abetting, advising, hiring, counseling, procuring another to commit the crime with intent to promote or assist in its commission, are guilty of the crime. All such participants are considered principals in the commission of the crime. The participation of each defendant in the crime must be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. And that would be, that last piece is just for the jury. And here, that's not the standard, right? The standard is whether or not probable cause has been demonstrated. Here, Mr. Vaughn is charged, Mr. Wandra, I apologize. Mr. Wandra is charged as a principal, and the court considers the evidence in this case through that lens. When I make any decision, I base that decision on the evidence that's presented. I certainly never make a decision based on hopes or guesses, based on the underlying subject matter of a case, no matter how tragic or innocuous. That is not part of a decision that a court uses, and certainly that I use when reaching some conclusion or decision. This court finds that substantial evidence has been presented as follows: that on or about July 27 of 2021, in Payette County, state of Idaho, Stacy Wandra seized, confined, unveiled, or kidnapped Michael Vaughn with the intent to cause him, without authority of law, to be secretly confined or imprisoned within the state or detained against his will. Or that Stacy Wandra took, enticed away, or detained Michael Vaughn, the child under the age of 16, with the intent to keep or conceal the child from his custodial parents in violation of Idaho Code 18-4501 and 4503. That in the perpetration or attempted perpetration of the felony crime of kidnapping on or about July 27 of 2021 in the state of Idaho, the defendant engaged in conduct that caused the death of Michael Vaughn, unlawfully killing him without justification and with malice by taking intentional acts, the natural consequence of which were dangerous to human life and deliberately performed with knowledge of the danger and with conscious disregard for human life, constituting murder. And that such murder was committed in the perpetration or attempted perpetration of a kidnapping in violation of Idaho Code 18-4001, 4002, and 4003. That on or between July 27 of 2021 and May 21st of 2025, in Payette County, state of Idaho, Stacy Wandra willfully destroyed, altered, or concealed evidence concerning the kidnapping and murder of Michael Vaughn, including but not limited to biological material, physical evidence, and digital information, knowing that these things were about to be produced, used, or discovered as evidence in a felony investigation, and with the intent to prevent that evidence from being produced, used, or discovered.
And in my opinion only here, it was the destruction of all of that evidence that has Stacy where he is now. Yes, there's other stuff, but like Juanita Kelleher said on the stand, the smoking gun was the fact that every digital everything erased the day that Michael Vaughn was abducted. Text messages being deleted, everything gone from July 27th. And then, of course, they just start getting rid of everything. The couch, the cars, SIM cards, phones, you name it. And they did it, it says, from July 27th all the way to May 21st of 2025. That is getting rid of a lot of stuff. Stuff that they're going to be able to use in Stacy Wandra's trial to show this evidence could have potentially been the evidence they could have used to 1000% prove that Stacy Wandra, Sarah Wandra, Adrian Lucien, and Brandon Shurtleff abducted and murdered Michael Vaughn.
These findings are made more than anything else on Mr. Wandra's statements to investigators. He described the abduction of Michael Vaughn under circumstances corroborated by other witnesses. He described the binding of Michael Vaughn together with him being secreted away at CUNA and his role in assisting that effort. That too is corroborated by physical circumstances confirmed by the investigators in this matter. He described the manner of death and the subsequent disposal of the body, with some of those details also corroborated by the results of the investigation. Finally, he described his role in destroying, exposing, and concealing many pieces of evidence that were about to be discovered during the investigation that was being conducted. The question before this court is not whether or not Mr. Wandra is guilty of these three charged offenses beyond a reasonable doubt. That is not the purpose of a preliminary hearing. That ultimately will be a question for a jury after a full trial. But I do find that the evidence demonstrates that the public offenses charged have been committed and that there is probable or sufficient cause that the defendant committed them. And so I will bind Mr. Wandra over to district court to answer for the charges of kidnapping in the second degree, murder in the first degree, and destruction or alteration or concealment of evidence. Madam Clerk, I think we have a date for that. All right. So what's proposed is that Judge McCarthy would preside over this case, and we would set an arraignment in front of him. I have half a dozen dates here, the first of which is April 1, 2026 at 3:30.
Judge, the defense cannot do that.
What about April 8th at 2 p.m.?
Sorry, that would be negative.
What about and I have some dates in between, I'm just trying to skip ahead, I don't know how tight your calendar is. What about the 14th of April at 10 a.m.?
I can make that work.
Well, would the 15th of April at 10 a.m. be better?
It sure would. Thank you.
Does that work for the state?
It works for the state.
All right. Anything further that the state believes should be presented today?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Anything further that the defense wishes to present today?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. We'll be in recess.
Oh, I'm muted. So there you have the end of the preliminary hearing. Judge says there's enough probable cause to move forward. Stacy Wandra's already been to district court, and we know that the trial is September 14th of 2026. So, I personally want to thank the media pool for trusting me. They could have put this information out themselves, but working with other people, made sure that I got this portable drive of the entire preliminary hearing. And I'm very grateful to the media pool and others that worked hard for that to happen, for just trusting me. Yeah, I feel truly blessed that I have been able to do it. I am glad that it is over, that we can move on. And I just want to thank all of you that have been here, that have watched all of this preliminary hearing here with me, that are sharing the preliminary hearing, talking about the preliminary hearing, because it is huge. The judge talks about the fact that law enforcement was able to corroborate stories or corroborate things from the stories that Stacy Wandra had told them. I think that's huge. I think all of this evidence that they tried to destroy will be huge during the trial. I think Stacy Wandra's own confessions to detectives will be huge, because you're not going to be able to prove that your rights have been violated when you're sitting there signing a piece of paper after being read your rights. You are signing it saying you understand your rights, not once, but twice. And he doesn't just confess to detectives, he confesses to his mom. There will be witnesses called forward, inmates of Stacy Wandra, that talked to Stacy Wandra about Michael's abduction, when Stacy Wandra talks about using insulin, and probably a lot more. You have Brandon Shirtliff, who is corroborating parts of Stacy Wandra's stories by saying, I saw Sarah and Stacy with a duffel bag. Well, how did he know that Stacy said something about a duffel bag? Because he talked about this duffel bag prior. Well, I guess it wasn't prior to, but I'm just saying, you have Brandon Shirtliff corroborating lots of the story. He and Stacy said that CUNA and towing Brandon's Mercedes back from CUNA would be their alibi. You hear Mike Duke saying that they all got together, they all decided that they were going to tell this story, this created story, that none of them had anything to do with Michael Vaughn's abduction and murder. And that's exactly what they have been doing. Saying, I didn't do it. We didn't do it. The problem came in when Stacy Wandra starts flipping. Sarah Wandra even wanted to talk to law enforcement about Michael. You heard Detective Kelleher talk about that, and she's offered a deal, but then she changes her mind and decides, oh, okay, I'm not going to do that. Well, she knows how much trouble she's going to get into if she admits what she did, but she still wanted to talk to law enforcement about Michael Vaughn and things that had happened. And how could she talk about Michael Vaughn and the things that had happened if she hasn't done anything? That doesn't make any sense. All of these suspects have pretty much corroborated what Stacy is saying by statements that they have made either on social media or in phone conversations or on YouTube. Stacy Wandra and Brandon Shirtliff talked about this duffel bag on YouTube, both saying, oh, well, it's not big enough to put a body in, when nobody asked them about a duffel bag. It is. It is insanity. That is one, it really is insanity. So much came out during the preliminary hearing. I think that they're going to be able to convict Stacy Wandra on all charges. And we haven't even heard all of the evidence. We just got this little tiny little smidge of it. But there's 20,000 pages of discovery. And I think there's going to be a lot more said. And I think if Stacy Wandra's convicted, or I should say when he is convicted, when he does go to prison, I think he's going to be like, hey, you guys want to cut some time off of my prison sentence? I'll testify against the other 3 people if you will cut some time down off my prison sentence. I can see that happening. I really, really can. And I can also see Sarah Wandra throwing everybody under the bus once she knows she's going to be charged and there's no getting around it at all. You know, Sarah keeps denying having anything to do with Michael Vaughn's abduction, but she's terrified of the DP. She's terrified to continue being in prison. She's terrified about going to Payette County, being in that jail, being moved. She does not want to go to Payette County at all. And she'll have to go to Payette County in order to have a preliminary hearing, which I will attend. 1,000% I will be there. And yeah, she is going to squeal and squeal loud when she is actually charged, when it sinks in, because right now she's in denial of any of it. When it sinks in and she's charged, those handcuffs are taking her to Payette County, she is going to start squealing. I wouldn't even doubt it if she starts doing it on the ride to Payette County Jail. She does not, she's comfortable where she is right now, is the thing. And moving her away from where she's comfortable does not sit well with her. She would probably rather just sit in prison where she's at right now for the rest of her life than to have to leave, be charged, and then, you know, be sent over to Payette County Jail. I don't know why she's so scared of that, but she is. Chaos Mama says these people turn on each other. Stacy threw the others under the bus. Why is she terrified of death? I thought she said Jesus forgave her. Right, Chaos Mama? She is terrified of the DP. And we all know that Idaho does the firing squad. That maybe that's one of the reasons why. Under Your Scars, thank you for being here. Says, thank you, Sam. I gotta run. Get mom her her nighttime meds and snacks. Thank you so much for being here, Under Your Scars. I truly appreciate it. Yeah, she'll go back to where she is now once she's convicted, but she'll have to stay in Payette County and I don't know why she's terrified of it being in Payette County, but she is, you know. And when you have these suspects too, don't forget, you have a certain person whispering in their ear, telling them all that, you know, you're not going to serve any time. You have a case here. You have a lawsuit against all these YouTubers. You guys have, your rights have been violated. There's evidence that somebody else has done this because they want to try to reiterate the fact that the Vaughns have done something to Michael, or that maybe Pidge has done something to Michael. It is absolutely ridiculous. Exactly, Kelly. Don't do the crime unless you can do the time. And when you have somebody saying all that stuff in your ear, you start believing it because it seems to be their only connection in the outside world. It's disgusting. It just is. Nobody should be hindering this investigation by talking to these suspects, by giving them advice that would go against what law enforcement is trying to do to try to help them get out of what they've done. When a person has admitted to watching and seeing or having something to do with it, and they have all admitted doing something, having knowledge of, which they just absolutely couldn't have unless they were involved. And that's what it literally comes down to. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me while trying to learn how to get everything downloaded off of this portable drive. I am so glad to be done and over with this and just be able to work on other lives, talk about other things, have, BRANDI up here on panel talking about life, their life, their nightmare, and also talking about the good things that are happening in their life right now. One, that Stacy Wandra is going to trial. Two, that they are trying to live again. They are trying very, very, very hard to live again, to live a life and not just exist. Goodbye, Liard. Thank you so much for being here. But I just want to thank everybody for sticking with me. I know we have spent a lot of time on this preliminary hearing, and I will have the entire preliminary hearing in a playlist. I've already created it. I just have to add a few more videos. So if any creators are out there, please feel free to use it. That's why it's there. That's why it's raw, no commentary. Anybody can use anything that I have done on Kyron or Michael Vaughn. So please, if you have any tips, call in a tip to law enforcement. The number is 208-642-6006, or you can email findmichael@fruitland.org. All of you can run, but you cannot hide, at least the two that are out. And justice is being served currently. Stacy Wandra is going to trial, and Sarah Wandra will be arrested. And Brandon, I'm pretty sure you're next. So keep trying to think that you aren't going to get arrested. That's your own stupidity, honestly. And all of you that is trusting this other YouTube creator, keep doing that. It helps us. It helps us because none of it is true. And the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to end up in prison for the rest of your life because you are listening to her. So keep going. Please call in a tip. Telephone number is 208-642-6006, or email findmichael@fruitland.org. No tip is too big or just too small. Let law enforcement decide whether or not your tip is credible. Please, you can even call in a tip anonymously. You can collect over $50,000 if your information leads to Michael Joseph Vaughn. He was abducted July 27th of 2021. These four suspects, Stacy Wandra, Sarah Wandra, Adrian Lucian, and Brandon Shirliff, have all been named suspects by law enforcement. And law enforcement includes not just Fruitland police. There have been lots of law enforcement agencies that have worked on this case. And they all believe that these 4 suspects are involved in Michael's abduction and murder. And there's no getting out of that. Even if you played a part, just like you hear the prosecuting attorney Mike Duke talk about when he's giving his closing argument, that aiding and abetting, being there, watching, not calling 911, not doing a damn thing, whether it's putting the power steering fluid in, whether, it's handing the duffel bag to somebody, coming up with the idea to go to CUNA, coming up and creating an alibi, deleting any of your information, helping get rid of the evidence. You are participating in the abduction of Michael Vaughn, which led to his death. That is what law enforcement has said. That is what law enforcement has told the Vaughn family. So remember that. You can talk just like Stacy. Say, I didn't abduct him. I didn't murder him. I had nothing to do with any of it. Guess what? You were still there and did nothing. All 4 of you are guilty, and you all know it. You can tell your story any way you want. The thing is, you're all going to go to jail and get arrested by Stacy's story alone if you don't start talking to law enforcement before your arrest. If anybody out there has heard any story by these 4 suspects, even if you think it's a rumor, it's important for you to talk about that to law enforcement. No tip is too big or too small. You could hold the tip that puts all the puzzle pieces together, and this entire 4.5 years, you just thought, oh my gosh, I thought that was a rumor, or I thought that was a lie. Even if it's hearsay, law enforcement can take what you're telling them and go talk to the actual person you're telling them you've spoken to or heard it from. The tip line phone number is 208-642-6006, or you can email findmichael@fruitland.org. Be Monkey's hero. Be this family's hero. Help bring a 5-year-old little boy home so he can be laid to rest. Not wherever he is away from his family. Home, where his parents and brother and sisters know where he is. So they no longer have to worry about where Michael is. He's home with them, and now they can have that little bit of peace. Monkey's Army isn't going anywhere. We're going to keep fighting. We're going to keep screaming from the rooftops about these 4 suspects. We're never going to give up. We're here to support the Vaughn family till the very, very end, till all 4 suspects are sitting in prison. Monkey's Army is strong. It is getting stronger and stronger, and so is BRANDI Vaughn. And I am telling you right now, you do not want to mess with that mama bear. The healthier she gets, the more she is setting her mind to taking care of business. And if you are in her way, she's going to roll right over you. Roll right over you. And there's a lot of people in her way right now. So you better watch out. That's my advice anyway. That tip line phone number 208-642-6006, or email findmichael@fruitland.org. Thank you guys so much for being here, for being a part of Monkey's Army. I love you guys. I'm really looking forward to next week. All I need to do now is get a hold of BRANDI, talk to her about times, and we'll be putting up some thumbnails and doing some shows next week. Thank you guys so much. I think somebody said Brandy, so she must have popped in, so I'm just taking a look. Yep, they are guilty by involvement. Brandon, just tell us where Michael is. Do the right thing for once in your life. Tina Maril, go down and talk to law enforcement. Tell them everything you know. Stop impeding. Or, I don't even know if I said that right. Let's see. Thank you, all of my moderators, for coming in, for joining me for all of these lives over the last couple of months. I know things have been really busy, a lot busier than I'm used to, because I don't usually do lives every single day throughout the week. Rowan, thank you for being here. Outdoorsy Life has popped in. Kimberly has popped in. I just saw Opal in here. Thank you all for coming. And don't forget to please share Michael, share his beautiful face, his story. Talk about Brandon Shirtliff. Talk about Adrian Lucian, Sarah Wandra, and Stacy Wandra. You know, take news clippings. Join us over at the Michael Vaughn Case Revisited group. And I put all of my information from my lives over there. And continue to watch the shorts that I create, because I am going to be putting up little bits and pieces of shorts from research and information that I have for everybody to learn about. And yeah, we will see you next week with Miss Brandy Vaughn. Thank you guys all for coming. I love you guys. See you on the next one.